You've got such a dearth of talent on your benches that holding on to James Cleverly in this particular manner is worth the price that you're going to pay in terms of being perceived to have a complete lack of integrity. Now, Rishi Sunak considers the matter closed over the Home Secretary making that date rape joke at that private gathering of journalists the other evening, saying that, let me just remind you of what he said. He said that he would give a little bit of Rohypnol to the Home Secretary, told female guest, a little bit of Rohypnol in his wife's drink every night was not really illegal if it's only a little bit. This was reported by the Sunday Mirror. He also laughed and said that the secret to a long marriage was ensuring your spouse was, inverted commas, someone who is always mildly sedated so she can never realise there are better men out there. Well, very interesting comments. Let's just put it that way. Interesting is a word used advisedly. Some would say downright disgraceful, including myself. Now, it does strike me that if you just put this in context for a second, the government's just announced a tightening of the laws around dealing with this date rape drug, Rohypnol. It's also been trying to, in recent years, deal with things like upskirting, which is taking photographs up women's skirts, and all of these sorts of things. Because of this misogynistic type behaviour persists in modern society. Heaven knows why, but it does. And then you've got the Home Secretary making a statement like this in a so-called private gathering with journalists. Now, he is someone at the top of government. He knows full well that there is no such thing as a private meeting with journalists. Or if he does think that it's private, then frankly, he's in the wrong job, because he's a very experienced politician. He's been involved in politics almost as long as I've been involved, or I was involved in politics. James Cleverly was, I think, one election behind me, but he's been involved in politics and been kicking around a long, long time. So he made those statements. There was an absolute furore on the back of it. And now, a few days later, after the Home Secretary has been facing calls to quit, after joking about this date rape drug for his wife, he has apologised, but he's been facing calls to resign by from multiple different quarters, including a women's charity as well. Labour has accused Rishi Sunak of an absence of leadership, accountability and integrity for failing to take action against him, and asked for the Prime Minister's thoughts on the comment. The latest from his official spokesman today was that it was right that the Home Secretary had apologised. So we should be grateful for that, of course. And he added, inverted commas, the Prime Minister considers the matter closed, and he and the Home Secretary are focused on the action that the government is taking to tackle spiking and protection of women and girls. So the case is closed, folks. That's it. Nothing to see here. Move on. Now, my question to you on the back of that, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on this in a minute, and I've got quite a few thoughts I can tell you, is this. Do standards in public life matter? Number one. And number two, what does it take to get sacked from this government? Do standards in public life matter? And what does it take to get sacked from this government? Now, let me give you my view on this. I do not believe that the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, should have been or be sacked by the Prime Minister. I do not believe that James Cleverly, the Home Secretary, should be sacked by the Prime Minister. Why? Because I think he should have resigned himself. James Cleverly should have resigned himself. I have known James Cleverly for many, many years. He's someone I have respected. He's one of the people within this government where admittedly the bar is very, very low when it comes to integrity in this government. But it's someone who I thought was trying to do his job as Foreign Secretary to the best of his ability. Unfortunately, in the Tory party, poshness trumps competence. So he got shunted across from Foreign Secretary to Home Secretary because David Cameron wanted to be brought back from exile in his shepherd's hut in the Cotswolds to play a leading role. Good for him. The Prime Minister, in his wisdom, or one could say lack of judgment, whatever which way you're on, brought Cameron back. Cleverly's been shunted to the Home Office and comes out with this utterly misplaced, so-called ironic joke. Now, look, I don't believe, knowing James Cleverly as I do, that he probably meant this at all. I'm guessing. I'm really guessing, but I cannot believe. I've known James for a long time. I do not believe that if he thought that this was going to be taken in this way, he would have not have said it. However, he did. And we all make mistakes in life. And part of the thing about actually being an adult and being a leading politician is if you make a mistake, you take ownership for it. And let's just remember this, that it was Rishi Sunak who came in on that Boris Johnson 3-year debacle of a premiership, where Boris Johnson, let's just not forget here, left not on any grounds of policy failure. He left on grounds of the 3 Ps. The Owen Paterson fiasco over lobbying infringement of parliamentary rules, the Chris Pincher fiasco, saying that Chris Pincher, who is one of the whips in his government, was a little bit, to quote him, handsy, and had allegedly acted with a degree of impropriety at a London club, the Carlton Club, which I used to be actually a member of. I'm glad I'm not now. And also parties in Downing Street. Parties in Downing Street during the COVID lockdowns, which were totally unforgivable. So Boris Johnson had presided over a government which completely lacked integrity. There were no policy failures whatsoever. He left in complete humiliation and disgrace. Why? Because his own MPs had no confidence that what they were being told by number 10 1 minute would not be completely and utterly reversed within 24 hours, making them utterly look stupid when they came into studios like this at LBC, only to have, as Geoffrey Howe would say, their bats broken by the team captain before the first balls were bowled. So that's why Boris Johnson left. It's only to be replaced by the paragon of competence, Liz Truss, the 49-day summer internship prime minister, who, look, I'm not saying she lacks integrity, but made a complete hash of the economy, presided over a massive intervention from the Bank of England, the likes we have not seen for decades since Black Wednesday. And not only after that complete humiliation, one would have thought that one would crawl under a rock somewhere on an island far, far away. But no, Liz Truss has been doubling down since then, saying that she was absolutely right, and indeed was lauded at a meeting at the Conservative Party conference with the longest queue anywhere in the conference over that 3 days. And when I asked Lord Frost about what that said about the Tory party, he said, well, it was all down to the blob, i.e. the civil service, not actually delivering and frustrating the will of Liz Truss and what she wanted to do. No responsibility whatsoever. So there's this culture that's now come in. You could call it the Trumpification of British politics, where instead of actually accepting that you've messed up, that you have had a complete lack of judgment, you double down and you just go hell for leather saying that you're absolutely in the right. This is where we've got to in this country. Now, just go back and remember what Rishi Sunak said when he came in as Prime Minister after that Liz Truss debacle. And I'll tell you what he said on the steps of Downing Street on the first day of office. This government will have integrity, professionalism and accountability at every level. Trust is earned and I will earn yours. Well, Rishi, I don't know what happened. You are a Wykehamist. You went to Winchester College, one of the most prestigious public schools in this country. And look, we used to play a number of public schools when I was at school, rugby and cricket and other things, including Eton. And we didn't play Winchester. It was a bit far away, but many. And I thought that actually at schools like Winchester, they taught you about character. Character was taught in the top public schools in this country. I thought that was what it was. These were the schools that were meant to be inculcating the leadership cadre and class in this country, the officer class, so to speak. And when I used to play rugby at Eton with the old Etonians, they were always very, very polite, very courteous. They used to escort you in their tailcoats to the rugby field, only to completely and utterly demolish you, and then invite you to tea afterwards. It was all very gentlemanly and civilised. I don't know what's happened to character in British politics today, but I don't like it. Now, for those of you who are wondering what actually happened in terms of trust in British politics, I'll tell you what's happened to trust in British politics, and I'll quote you the figures from YouGov. According to YouGov, 2 in 5 people in England, 41%, now say that democracy is not working. People see the biggest current threat to our democracy as the loss of trust, 32%, followed by Corruption, 16%. 76% of the public in England don't trust MPs to take decisions that will improve their lives, while 73% don't trust the UK government on the same measure, and 46% of the public in England selected honesty and integrity as important values for the government to exemplify, yet 61% do not believe that the current UK government reflects these values at all, while 23% believe they slightly reflect these values. So it's not a good position for British politics to be. And now let me just tell you this, for those of you who believe that there is no basis or no guidance for integrity and behaviour in public life, I'm afraid you're all wrong, because there are. There are very clear principles, and let me tell you what they are. They're called the Nolan principles from 1995. They were formed by the Independent Committee on Standards Life, and there are 7 of them, and let me just tell you what they are. Very interesting. Selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. Now you tell me, and I take no pleasure in this because I consider James Cleverly to be a decent man and a friend, but I take no pleasure in saying this at all. But how on earth, in one of the 4 great offices of state, can you not resign on the back of the Nolan principles after making a monumental mess up like that? It's beyond me. I tell you, I was thinking about this. I was talking to my producer, Robbie. We were just chatting about all the people before we came on the show who have got themselves into hot water in recent years. The list is a long one. Boris, Truss, Pincher, Patterson, parties, Peter Bone, Priti Patel bullying, remember that report, which led to the independent advisor on the ministerial code, Sir Alex Allen, resigning because the Prime Minister, who has to opine, and Boris Johnson at the time, who had to opine on whether the breach of the ministerial code had occurred, concluded that Boris Johnson concluded there had not been. Sir Alex Allen, who was the independent advisor on the code, resigned in disgust at that decision. But it doesn't stop there. Look at the language that's used. Lee Anderson telling people to off back to France. That was a deliberate cough, by the way, because a swear word you can insert beginning with F. Back to France, asylum seekers if they don't like it here, on the Bibi Stockholm. I mean, you are a leading figure within the Conservative Party, and this sort of language is now acceptable, is it? And then you've got Suella Braverman talking about invasions and about hurricanes and other things. Look, quite frankly, I was discussing with a friend of mine before I came on, the last person who actually resigned on principle within the Tory party is very difficult. One has to rack one's brains. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's Lord Carrington in 1982 when he was Foreign Secretary and Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands. I mean, that's pretty damning, isn't it? You've got to go back over 40 years to find any decency in the current in the Conservative Party leading this country. I mean, I find that absolutely disgraceful. And there is a path actually to doing the decent thing. John Profumo, who was Minister of War in 1961, resigned from Harold Macmillan's government over the Christine Keeler affair. What did he do? He took it on the chin like an adult, and he spent the rest of his life seeking redemption by helping people in the East End of London who are the most destitute, homeless, disadvantaged people you could possibly imagine, and was later recognised for that with an honour. So there used to be a thing called decency, respect, honour, integrity when it comes to public life. What on earth has gone wrong? My view is very simple. Rishi Sunak should not have sacked James Cleverly. He should have resigned. And the very fact that he hasn't resigned is deeply disappointing to me because I think at his heart, James Cleverly is an honourable, decent man. But this is not an honourable, decent thing to do. And it just means to me, it just smacks to me of a doubling down mentality that has taken hold in British politics. So whatever you do, whatever you say, you just double down and tough it out. How about actually standing up and showing some leadership, honesty, integrity, openness, and all of these things that the Nolan principles, which have been defined, actually call for? How about that? Frankly, I'm sorry to say this government is on its knees. It's got a dearth of talent. I know that Rishi Sunak, I had a lot of time for Rishi when you came in, but I think honestly you're presiding over a complete shambolic mess of a government, quite frankly. And I think it really demeans not only the government, but the whole of public life. And it's really, really deeply troubling and disappointing that we are in a situation now where I can probably understand from your perspective that you've got such a dearth of talent on your benches that holding on to James Cleverly in this particular manner is worth the price that you're going to pay in terms of being perceived to have a complete lack of integrity. I think that's lamentable. I think it's deeply disappointing. And I think it's a real, real shame that British politics, the cauldron of democracy around the world, the mother of all parliaments, has come to a situation like this. Deeply, deeply lamentable. Do standards in public life matter? And what does it take to get sacked from this government?